For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had one running joke that never got old: Earth. The tiny blue marble spinning in an unremarkable solar system, inhabited by a species so primitive they still fought wars over resources, while sitting on a planet rich enough to feed 100 worlds. The humans were the cosmic equivalent of children playing with sticks while sitting on a mountain of diamonds. Council meetings often began with the latest Earth report, how humans had discovered fire again after bombing themselves back to the Stone Age, or how they'd invented some laughably inefficient technology that the galaxy had perfected millennia ago. The crystalline vortex would chime in harmonic amusement. Even the stoic Drakmari would allow themselves a rare smile. But laughter has a way of dying in one's throat when the joke suddenly stops being funny. The day the human ships appeared in Galactic Council space, sleek and silent as death itself, no one was laughing anymore. These weren't the crude chemical rockets the surveillance reports had documented. These vessels moved like liquid shadow, their hulls drinking in starlight and reflecting nothing back. When the lead ship spoke, its transmission cut through every form of galactic communication simultaneously, a feat that should have been impossible. "We are humanity," the voice said, calm and measured. "We've been watching, we've been waiting, we've been preparing. The laughter ends now." The galaxy was about to learn that the greatest mistake a predator can make is underestimating prey that has been hiding in plain sight. Ambassador Kethvar of the Drakmari Empire adjusted his ceremonial scales as he entered the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The massive space station, Nexus Prime, hummed with the conversations of 200 species, each more advanced than the last primitive world they'd been monitoring for entertainment. Today's session promised to be particularly amusing. The quarterly Earth report was scheduled. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline dome that stretched across nearly a kilometer, with gravity fields allowing representatives to orient themselves according to their species' preferences. Aquatic delegates floated in pressure spheres, energy beings flickered within containment fields, and silicon-based life forms grew directly from the floor in designated plots. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," announced High Arbiter Zilnash, her tentacles weaving through the air in formal greeting patterns. "We gather for our 12,847th Council session. As tradition dictates, we begin with updates from our monitoring stations." A collective ripple of anticipation moved through the assembly. Everyone knew what came next. "Director Vexhai of Survey Station 12, please present your findings on Sol 3. A tall, insectoid figure approached the central platform, his compound eyes glittering with barely contained amusement. The Vorthak were known for their detailed observation skills, making them perfect for monitoring primitive civilizations. Vexhai activated the holographic display, and Earth appeared in all its blue-green glory, rotating slowly above the assembled delegates. "Esteemed colleagues," Vexhai began, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his species, "the humans continue to provide endless entertainment. In the past standard cycle, they have managed to achieve several remarkable feats of backwards engineering." Laughter rippled through the chamber as the first images appeared. Crude spacecraft that still relied on chemical propulsion, cities that sprawled across landscapes with no regard for efficiency, and, most amusing of all, weapons that actually required physical projectiles. "They have discovered quantum entanglement," Vexhai continued, "and are using it to make their primitive computers marginally less primitive. Meanwhile, they remain completely unaware that their planet sits atop one of the galaxy's richest deposits of zilithium ore, enough to power their entire civilization for 1,000,000 years, buried just beneath what they call the Pacific Ocean floor." The Zephyrian delegate released a gaseous burst of laughter. "Do they still fight over the black liquid? Oil?" "Oh yes, extensively. They've apparently forgotten they achieved fusion power 6 months ago. Different groups of humans, you see. They don't actually share information effectively." "Fascinating," chimed a crystalline gent representative. "Primitive intertribal competition despite being a single species. Kethvar leaned back in his allocated space, enjoying the familiar routine. The Drakmari Empire had first discovered Earth during the humans' medieval period, and watching their painfully slow progress had become something of a cultural phenomenon. Drakmari children learned mathematics by calculating how long it would take humans to achieve basic space travel. The current estimate was another 1,000 years. "Show them the war footage," called out someone from the upper tiers. Vexay's mandibles clicked faster, the Vorthak equivalent of a chuckle. "Ah yes, the humans are currently engaged in 17 separate armed conflicts, including one where both sides are fighting over a strategic resource they could synthesize in any basic matter compiler." The hologram shifted to show scenes from various human conflicts: soldiers carrying individual weapons, vehicles that required pilots, aircraft that actually needed to push through atmosphere instead of manipulating local space-time. It was like watching children play with toys. "The most amusing part," Vexai continued, "is their space program. They've actually managed to land on their own moon, using controlled explosions to push a metal cylinder through vacuum. The inefficiency is staggering. My ship's waste disposal system has more advanced propulsion." The laughter grew louder. Someone called out, "Have they discovered us yet?" Their most powerful telescopes can barely detect the edge of civilization space. They believe they're alone in the universe. Completely alone. Vexay paused for effect. In fact, they spend considerable resources broadcasting radio signals into space, hoping someone might answer. "Do they know about the monitoring stations?" asked a delegate Kethvar couldn't identify from the middle section. "The observation posts are running full stealth protocols, but honestly, we probably don't need them. Human sensor technology couldn't detect our stations if we painted them bright yellow and hung signs on them." High Arbiter Zelenash gestured for attention. "Any requests for intervention status changes?" A few tentacles, limbs, and appendages rose throughout the chamber, but not many. Intervention protocols required unanimous consent, and the entertainment value of watching humans stumble through technological development was too high for most species to give up. The Compassionate Coalition requests permission to provide subtle guidance on their environmental issues, announced a soft-voiced Melody delegate. The Melody were known for their bleeding hearts when it came to primitive species. "Denied," came the chorus from dozens of species simultaneously. Temporal Prime Directive protocols remain in effect. Kethvar had voted with the majority. The humans would figure out their environmental problems eventually. Or they wouldn't. Either outcome would be instructive to observe. Besides, intervention had never gone well. The last time the Council had interfered with a primitive species, the Krell of Andromeda 7, they'd skipped 10,000 years of natural development and immediately declared war on their benefactors. "Any other business regarding Sol 3? asked the High Arbiter. Vexkai raised a foreclaw. "There is one minor anomaly worth noting. Our deep space monitoring posts have detected some unusual energy signatures from the outer edges of the Sol system. Probably just solar storm interference, but we're investigating." A Drakmari mathematician in the upper section called out, "Could they have achieved FTL communication somehow?" "Impossible," Vexai replied immediately. "Their most advanced communication technology still requires physical infrastructure. They're at least 5 centuries away from discovering subspace frequencies." "What about their internet?" asked a young Zephyrian. "My species study advisor says they've created a primitive neural network." Amusing, but hardly relevant. It's strictly electromagnetic spectrum-based. They're essentially shouting very fast across copper wires and light beams. The session continued for another hour, covering routine matters of galactic trade, border disputes between advanced civilizations, and the quarterly report on the ongoing Makari-Thexian philosophy war that had been raging for 600 years without a single casualty. Intellectuals settling disputes through competitive reasoning rather than violence, a luxury of truly advanced civilizations. As delegates began filing out, Kethvar noticed Vexhai speaking quietly with several other Survey Division officials. Something about their posture suggested concern rather than amusement. He approached the group, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence on the crystal floor. "Director Vexahai, a word?" The Vorthak turned, compound eyes reflecting the chamber's ambient lighting. Ambassador Kethvar, how can I assist the Drakmari Empire? That energy signature anomaly you mentioned. How minor is minor? Vex Aishi's mandibles twitched, a sign of uncertainty. Truthfully, we're not sure. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. Not solar storm activity, not natural phenomenon, but also not matching any known technology signature. Could another council member be conducting unauthorized research in the Sol system? Negative. All council vessel movements are tracked. This is something else. Kethvar felt the first whisper of unease. In his 300 years of council service, anomalies around primitive worlds usually meant one of two things, either natural phenomena requiring scientific study or the primitive species had stumbled onto something they shouldn't have. Should have answers within the next cycle. Quote, within the next cycle, the Drakmari Empire has significant research investments in primitive species development patterns. As Kethvar made his way to the transport hub, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing. The routine of the Earth reports had been the same for centuries. Technological progress so slow it was measured in decades, social development that moved in circles, and complete ignorance of the vast galaxy surrounding them. But the universe had a way of making fools of those who assumed patterns would continue forever. 3 days later, his personal communicator chimed with an encrypted message from Director Vex Hei. The text was brief but troubling. Energy signatures increasing. Source appears to be artificial. Request immediate consultation. Kethvar stared at the message for a long moment. Artificial energy signatures from a species that shouldn't be capable of producing anything their sensors could detect from interstellar distances. A species whose most advanced power source was barely controlled nuclear fusion. He initiated a priority response. Authorize full surveillance package. I want to know everything. But deep in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that they might already be too late to know everything. That perhaps, while the galaxy had been laughing at Earth, Earth had been doing something other than providing entertainment. Something that might change the balance of everything they thought they knew about primitive species, technological development, and the comfortable assumption that advanced civilizations were always in control. Director Vexi Hai stood before the massive sensor array aboard Survey Station 12, his compound eyes processing data streams that made no sense according to everything the galaxy knew about human technological capability. The station itself was a marvel of Galactic Council engineering, a stealth observation post positioned at the edge of the Sol system equipped with sensors capable of detecting a child's whisper from 3 planets away. Show me the timeline again, he commanded his assistant, a young Vorthak named Kilmoth who had been eager for assignment to humanity observation duty. Most young surveyors considered it a career stepping stone. Monitoring primitive species was safe, predictable, and looked good on advancement reviews. The holographic display materialized between them, showing energy readings from the past 96 standard hours. What Vexai saw made his mandibles click nervously. The initial spike originated from coordinates 41.2858 degrees north, 70.0994 degrees west on Earth's surface, Kilmoth reported, consulting his datapad. That corresponds to a location humans call Cape Cod in their North American continent. Populated area? Sparsely. Primarily what humans classify as vacation homes and small fishing communities. Nothing that should generate energy signatures visible from interstellar distances. The initial spike had been brief but intense, lasting exactly 3.7 seconds and producing energy output equivalent to a small star going nova. For 3.7 seconds, that tiny patch of Earth had blazed across their sensors like a beacon. Any follow-up activity? That's where it gets interesting, Director. Kilmoth manipulated the display, zooming in on the 48 hours following the initial event. Every 12 hours since, we've detected similar spikes from different locations. Always coastal areas, always sparsely populated, always lasting exactly 3.7 seconds. The pattern was unmistakable. 17 separate events, each in a different location, each producing the same impossible energy signature. The most recent had occurred just 6 hours ago from coordinates near what humans called the Mariana Trench. Energy composition analysis? The computer cannot classify it. It's not fusion, not antimatter, not zero-point extraction, not any form of energy production in our databases. Vexai felt his exoskeleton prickle with unease. In over 2 centuries of council survey work, he had cataloged energy signatures from over 3,000 different civilizations. Everything from primitive combustion to exotic matter manipulation. But this was genuinely new. Could they have discovered something in their oceans, some previously unknown energy source? Possible, but unlikely. Our geological surveys of Earth are comprehensive. There's nothing down there except water, standard mineral deposits, and that zelithium we've been monitoring. Unless... Kilmoth paused, his mandibles spreading in thought. Unless what? Unless they've learned to tap the zelithium without mining it. But that would require quantum resonance technology they won't develop for another millennium. The observation station's main communication array suddenly blazed to life, indicating an incoming priority transmission. Vexai activated the receiver, expecting another routine check-in from Nexus Prime. Instead, Ambassador Kethvar's scaled visage appeared in the hologram, his usually composed features showing clear signs of agitation. Director Vexai, I'm en route to your position aboard the Sovereign's Pride. ETA 4 hours. I need you to prepare a complete data package on these energy anomalies. Ambassador, with respect, a full Drakmari battlecruiser approaching the Sol system might violate stealth protocols. We've been analyzing similar energy signatures from our own monitoring stations. This isn't isolated to your sector. Vexai felt his compound eyes widen. Other locations? 17 different primitive species across the galaxy, Director. All within the past 96 hours. All producing identical energy signatures, all previously classified as pre-FTL civilizations. The implications hit Vexai high like a meteor strike. 17 primitive species scattered across the galaxy simultaneously developing the same unknown energy technology. The probability was so low it essentially equaled impossible. That suggests coordination, Ambassador. None of them good for our current understanding of how the universe works. The transmission ended, leaving Vexai staring at data that made increasingly less sense. He turned to Kilmoth, who had been listening with growing alarm. Run a deep scan on Earth's electromagnetic spectrum. I want to know every radio wave, every transmission, every electronic signal on the planet. Director, that will take... Do it now! While Kilmoth worked frantically at his console, Vexai accessed the station's historical database. If humans had somehow made contact with other primitive species, there would be traces. Communication requires transmission, and transmission requires energy. The deep scan results began flowing across his screens 40 minutes later. As expected, Earth's electromagnetic spectrum was cluttered with human chatter. Television broadcasts, radio communications, internet data, satellite transmissions. All of it primitive, inefficient, and completely normal. But buried in the noise, almost invisible against the background radiation, Vexai found something that made his blood chill. Kilmoth, bring up spectral analysis grid 847.332 through 847.334. The young surveyor complied, and together they stared at what appeared to be nothing more than cosmic background radiation. Except for the pattern, a pattern so subtle that their equipment had classified it as natural phenomenon. That's a subspace carrier wave, Vexai whispered. Impossible. Humans don't have subspace technology. They don't need it. Vexai's mind was racing, putting together pieces of a puzzle that redefined everything they thought they knew. They're not generating the subspace signal, they're modulating it. He pulled up Earth's internet traffic patterns and overlaid them with the subspace carrier wave. The correlation was perfect. Every data packet, every communication, every electronic transaction on Earth was somehow being encoded into quantum fluctuations that propagated faster than light across galactic distances. They've turned their entire primitive communication network into a subspace transmitter, Vexai breathed. Without even knowing they've done it. But how? They don't understand quantum mechanics at the level required for... They don't need to understand it. Vexihei was pulling up more data, his mind working furiously. Look at their internet infrastructure. Fiber optic cables, quantum encryption experiments, distributed computing networks. They've accidentally created the perfect conditions for quantum entanglement on a planetary scale. The truth was staggering in its implications. Humans had been broadcasting across the galaxy for decades, not through radio signals, but through quantum entanglement networks they'd built without realizing their true purpose. Every email, every social media post, every streaming video had been instantaneously transmitted to every other primitive world in the galaxy. The energy spikes, Killmoth said, understanding dawning in his voice, those aren't weapons or power sources. No. They're response confirmations. Other primitive species have been receiving human transmissions and learning to send responses back. Before either of them could fully process this revelation, every alarm on the observation station began screaming simultaneously. Killmoth rushed to his sensor station while Vexihei checked the long-range detection array. Director, contact bearing 347, Mark 83, distance 2 light minutes and closing fast council vessel. Negative. Unknown configuration. Unknown energy signature. Unknown propulsion system. Vexihei's screens lit up with sensor data that defied everything he knew about spacecraft design. The approaching vessel was roughly cylindrical, about 2 kilometers long, with a hull that seemed to absorb scanning attempts, no visible engines, no energy emissions, no communication signals. And it was moving at 60% light speed without showing any signs of deceleration. Impossible, Killmoth whispered. At that velocity, they should impact our position in... The unknown vessel simply stopped. No gradual deceleration, no course correction, no energy discharge. It went from 60% light speed to completely stationary in the space between one sensor sweep and the next, positioned exactly 1,000 kilometers from their station. Director, Killmoth's voice was barely audible. That ship just violated at least 7 fundamental laws of physics. Open communication channels. All frequencies. No response to standard hails. But, Director, I'm picking up something else. That subspace carrier wave we detected earlier? It's stronger now, much stronger, and it's coming from the unknown vessel. Vexihei watched his screens in growing amazement as the carrier wave strengthened and suddenly resolved into something impossible. Perfect, clear human speech transmitted through subspace at frequencies no human technology should be able to access. Survey Station 12, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Prometheus. We know you're there. We've known for quite some time. The voice was calm, professional, speaking in standard galactic diplomatic protocol despite coming from a species that wasn't supposed to know galactic civilization existed. We'd like to have a conversation, Director Vexihei. We have some things to discuss about the assumptions your people have been making about us. Vexihei's mandibles clicked frantically as he processed what he was hearing. Not only did humans know about galactic civilization, they knew about the observation stations. They knew his name. They knew he'd been watching them, and they'd just demonstrated technology that surpassed anything in the Galactic Council's arsenal. Killmoth, Vexihei said quietly, his voice steady despite the universe-altering implications of what he was witnessing. Send an emergency transmission to Ambassador Kethvar. Full priority, maximum encryption. What should I tell him, Director? Vexihei looked at the impossible human vessel hanging motionless in space, its very existence rewriting everything the galaxy thought it knew about technological development, intelligence, and which species were truly primitive. Tell him the entertainment is over. Ambassador Kethvar stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Pride, his scaled hands gripping the command rail as he stared at the tactical display showing 3 impossible human vessels maintaining perfect formation around Survey Station 12. Each ship was different in design but identical in their complete disregard for known physics. Captain, Kethvar addressed the ship's commander, a veteran Drakmari officer named Mordoon who had served in campaigns against the Makari hive mind. Analysis of their propulsion systems? None detectable, Ambassador. Our engineers have been studying their movement patterns for the past 6 hours. They achieve acceleration and deceleration without any visible energy output, without gravitic distortion, without antimatter signatures. It's as if they're simply deciding to be in different locations. The lead human vessel, the one that had identified itself as Prometheus, had been joined by 2 others in the past several hours. The second ship appeared to be made entirely of some crystalline material that bent light around it in impossible ways. The third looked like it was constructed from living metal that rippled and flowed like water while maintaining structural integrity. Any response to our communication attempts? However, they continued to communicate directly with Director Vexay's station using that unknown subspace carrier wave technology. Kethvar activated his personal communicator connecting directly to the observation station. Vexay's image appeared immediately, his compound eyes darting nervously between multiple data screens. Director, report. Ambassador, I need to prepare you for what you're about to hear. These humans have been in contact with 17 other primitive species across the galaxy. They've created what they call a primitive species collective, and they've been sharing technological development for approximately 43 years. 43 years? That's impossible. Our monitoring protocols would have detected. They specifically designed their communication methods to evade our detection protocols, Ambassador. They've been studying us while we studied them. The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. 4 decades of technological exchange between species the Council considered barely capable of spaceflight. 4 decades of coordinated development specifically designed to remain hidden from galactic civilization. What do they want? To talk. Captain Chen has agreed to a face-to-face meeting aboard her vessel. She's requesting that you and I transport over to discuss what she calls the future relationship between advanced and developing civilizations. Kethvar felt his scales ripple with unease. Boarding an unknown vessel operated by a species that had just demonstrated technology beyond Council capabilities was not standard diplomatic procedure. On the other hand, this situation was already so far beyond standard that traditional protocols were meaningless. Security assessment? But I should mention that Captain Chen spoke directly to Director of Council Intelligence Zarkai 3 hours ago. She knew his personal communication codes and accessed secure Council databases to verify her identity claims. She did what? They've been monitoring our communications, Ambassador. All of them. For decades. The bridge of the Sovereign's Pride fell silent except for the humming of life support systems. Kethvar processed the information slowly, understanding that this conversation was rewriting galactic history with every sentence. Very well, prepare a diplomatic shuttle. Full escort formation. Actually, Ambassador, came a new voice through the communication system. Clear, confident, speaking perfect Drakmari with just enough accent to identify the speaker as human. That won't be necessary. We can bring you aboard more efficiently. Every sensor alarm on the bridge screamed simultaneously as a column of impossible light materialized directly in front of Kethvar. The light resolved into 2 figures, a human female wearing a simple uniform with captain's insignia and Director Vexay looking thoroughly bewildered. Transportation technology, Captain Chen said calmly, as if materializing on the bridge of a Drakmari battlecruiser was a routine occurrence. We adapted it from watching your own transport systems, then improved the efficiency by about 300%. Captain Mordun had his weapon drawn, but Chen ignored it completely, instead focusing on Kethvar with eyes that held intelligence far beyond what Council assessments had attributed to her species. Ambassador Kethvar, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I'm Captain Sarah Chen, representing the Primitive Species Collective. We have a great deal to discuss. How did you penetrate our shields? We didn't. We temporarily adjusted the quantum resonance of our molecules to phase through your hull. Standard technique when dealing with energy barriers.
Kethvar gestured for Mordun to lower his weapon.
Whatever was happening here, violence was clearly pointless against beings who could walk through starship hulls. What do you want from the Galactic Council? Nothing, Ambassador? We want to give you something. Chen reached into her uniform and produced a small device that looked like crystallized starlight. This is a quantum computation matrix. It contains the collective technological achievements of 18 species working together for 4 decades without the bureaucratic limitations of the Council system. Faster-than-light communication that doesn't require subspace infrastructure. Energy production that makes your fusion systems look like campfires. Medical technology that can repair genetic damage at the quantum level. Material science that lets us build ships from programmable matter. Why would you share this with us? Because you've been operating under some dangerous assumptions, Ambassador. The galaxy isn't divided between advanced and primitive civilizations. It's divided between civilizations that learn to work together and civilizations that learn to work alone. Director Vexay stepped forward, his mandibles clicking rapidly. Captain, our observations clearly showed human technological development following standard primitive patterns. You observed what we wanted you to observe, Director. Chen's voice remained patient, almost gentle. We've known about the Galactic Council for over 2 centuries. Your observation posts aren't nearly as stealthy as you think they are. 2 centuries? A human named Tesla detected energy signatures from your first survey vessel in 1899. Once we knew you were watching, we started watching back. Your technology is impressive, but it's also predictable. You follow the same development patterns, the same social structures, the same assumptions about intelligence and capability. You've been deliberately maintaining the appearance of primitive development? Exactly. While your civilizations spent millennia perfecting individual technologies, we spent decades learning from each other's mistakes. While you built massive bureaucracies to govern technological advancement, we built networks to share knowledge instantly across galactic distances. Chen gestured, and the air around them filled with holographic displays showing impossible scenes, cities that floated in Earth's atmosphere, spacecraft emerging from what looked like tears in reality, factories that assembled matter from quantum foam. The collective includes species you've never detected, Ambassador, worlds your surveys classified as uninhabited that actually support civilizations more advanced than anything in Council space. We've been building a parallel galactic civilization right under your sensors. Impossible! Our detection methods are designed to find civilizations like yours. Energy-intensive, resource-heavy, expanding outward from home systems. We learn to build inward instead. Pocket dimensions, quantum-folded space, cities that exist in the gaps between atoms. Very little energy signature, completely invisible to conventional sensors. Captain Morden spoke for the first time. If you're so advanced, why reveal yourselves now? Because you're about to make a catastrophic mistake. Chen's expression grew serious. The Makari-Thexian philosophy war is about to go hot. Real war, not intellectual competition. And when it does, it's going to destabilize this entire galactic region. Kephar's scales went cold. How do you know about classified council intelligence? We know because we've been monitoring the quantum probability matrices around both civilizations. The philosophical differences are irreconcilable, and both sides are secretly preparing for armed conflict while maintaining the pretense of peaceful debate. Even if that were true, the council would contain any conflict. The council couldn't contain a determined child with a water gun, Ambassador. You've become so focused on governing that you've forgotten how to respond to actual threats. Chen manipulated her controls, and the holographic displays shifted to show massive fleets massing in deep space, weapon systems that could shatter planets, and strategic assessments that painted a picture of inevitable galactic war. The Makari have developed quantum virus technology that can rewrite the basic laws of physics in localized space. The Thexians have response with reality anchors that can lock down entire solar systems. When they engage, the resulting cascade failure will make supernovae look like firecrackers. Why should we believe you? Because, Ambassador, we're offering to help prevent it. Chen deactivated the displays and fixed Kethkavar with a steady gaze. The Primitive Species Collective has capabilities the Council needs. More importantly, we have perspectives the Council lacks.
What kind of perspectives? We know how to fight, Ambassador. Really fight.
Not the kind of sterile, bureaucratic conflicts the Council specializes in, but actual survival warfare against impossible odds. Every species in our collective earned their membership by surviving something that should have destroyed them. Chen's voice took on a harder edge. Humans survived nuclear warfare, global climate collapse, and 6 different extinction events. The Kithara survived their star-going nova and built a civilization inside the resulting black hole. The Nethys fought a 50,000-year war against a machine intelligence and won by teaching their children to think in non-linear mathematics. We're survivors, Ambassador, and we're offering to teach the Council how to survive what's coming. Director Vex's compound eyes were processing rapidly. What do you want in return? Recognition, equal status in galactic governance, an end to the condescending observation programs, and a start to actual cooperation between civilizations. The Council would never, because the alternative is watching galactic civilization tear itself apart in a war they're not equipped to prevent or survive. She touched her uniform and suddenly the air was filled with images of Council military forces, outdated weapon systems, predictable tactical doctrines. Fleets designed for peacekeeping rather than warfare. Your military hasn't fought a real war in over 3,000 years, Ambassador. You've become bureaucrats with starships. When the Makari and Thexians engage, you'll discover that 3 millennia of peace doesn't prepare you for species that remember how to kill efficiently. Kefar stared at the tactical assessments, seeing with awful clarity how unprepared the Council was for actual military conflict. Everything Chen was showing him confirmed his worst fears about galactic security. What exactly are you proposing? The collective provides military expertise, advanced defensive technologies, and strategic capabilities. The Council provides legitimacy, established diplomatic frameworks, and access to resources we'd prefer not to have to take by force. The last phrase hung in the air like a threat wrapped in diplomatic language. And if the Council refuses, then the collective will handle the coming war ourselves, Ambassador, and afterward we'll handle the Council too. The galaxy is changing, Ambassador Kethvar. The only question is whether the Galactic Council changes with it or gets left behind by species that learn to evolve. High Arbiter Zilnash stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council, her tentacles weaving patterns of barely controlled panic as representatives from 200 species argued in dozens of languages. The Grand Chamber, which had recently echoed with laughter at primitive Earth reports, now buzzed with fear and confusion. "Order!" she commanded, her voice enhanced by psionic amplifiers. "We will have order." The chaos gradually subsided, but the tension remained thick enough to taste. In the 3 days since Ambassador Kethvar's report about the human encounter, the galaxy had changed in ways that made millennia of careful diplomatic progress seem like children's games. Ambassador Kethvar of the Drakmari Empire will present his updated intelligence assessment. Behind him, holographic displays dulled with stress. Behind him, holographic displays activated showing tactical data that had been arriving in increasingly disturbing updates. "Esteemed delegates," he began, "our worst fears have been confirmed. The Makari-Thexian conflict has escalated beyond philosophical debate." The first hologram showed the Proxima Centauri system where both civilizations had maintained research stations for centuries. What remained was a sphere of twisted space-time where physics no longer functioned according to natural laws. 6 hours ago, Makari forces deployed their quantum virus technology against the Thexian research facility at Proxima. The Thexians responded with reality anchors set to maximum intensity. The result is a zone where cause and effect operate backward, gravity flows uphill, and matter occasionally ceases to exist. Gasps and alarmed sounds rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Gent delegate's harmonic voice cut through the noise. Casualties? Both facilities' 17 research vessels and approximately 40,000 scientists from both sides. But the casualties are the least concerning aspect. Kethvar manipulated the display, zooming out to show the affected region expanding like a cancer across local space. The reality distortion is growing. Our physicists estimate that at current expansion rates, it will reach inhabited systems within 2 standard cycles. What does this have to do with the primitive species situation? Demanded the Zephyrian representative, releasing bursts of agitated gas. Everything. Kethvar activated another display showing the impossible human vessels that had appeared throughout Council space in the past 48 hours. The Primitive Species Collective has deployed defensive technology around 17 Council systems. They claim to be containing the reality distortion. Claim to be? They're succeeding. Kethvar's voice carried a mixture of amazement and dread. Human technology is actually stabilizing space-time in the affected regions. Before the implications of this could fully sink in, the Chamber's emergency communication array blazed to life. High Arbiter Zilnash activated the receiver expecting an update from their military forces. Instead, Captain Sarah Chen appeared in perfect holographic detail, standing calmly aboard what appeared to be the bridge of her impossible vessel. High Arbiter, honored delegates, I apologize for interrupting your session. However, time is becoming a critical factor. Quote, the chamber erupted in outraged voices. A primitive species human interrupting a council session was beyond unprecedented. It was unthinkable. Security breach, someone shouted. How is she accessing our communication array? We're not accessing it, Chen replied calmly. We're temporarily borrowing quantum coherence from your transmission systems, standard technique when dealing with bureaucratic emergencies. High Arbiter Zilnash gestured for silence, her tentacles weaving patterns of forced calm. Captain Chen, this is highly irregular. High Arbiter, with respect, irregularity is the least of your concerns right now. Chen gestured, and the chamber's central display activated, showing real-time sensor data from the expanding reality distortion. The Makari and Thexian forces are preparing for full military engagement. Both sides have convinced themselves that total victory will allow them to reverse the damage to space-time. They're wrong. Full engagement will shatter the quantum foundations of this entire galactic region. A new voice cut through the chamber, speaking in the harmonic tones of High Makari command dialect. Primitive human, you speak of matters beyond your comprehension. The speaker materialized on the chamber floor, a Makari warsinger whose very presence made reality shimmer around its crystalline form. Chen didn't seem impressed. Warsinger Kralvex, your quantum virus technology was impressive. Unfortunately, it was also catastrophically miscalibrated. You've created a cascade failure that will eventually consume 67 star systems. Impossible. Our calculations were based on pre-war physics. You forgot to account for the Thexian reality anchors which fundamentally alter quantum probability in ways your mathematics can't handle. The Makari being's crystalline structure pulsed with aggressive energy. You dare lecture the Makari on quantum mechanics? I dare lecture anyone who's about to accidentally destroy a significant portion of the galaxy, Warsinger. Space twisted again and a Thexian military commander appeared, a being of pure geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The human speaks truth regarding miscalculation, the Thexian announced. However, Thexian computational matrices indicate Makari aggression must be terminated with extreme prejudice. Geometric leader Alfen, Chen addressed the new arrival. Your reality anchors are causing quantum decoherence on a scale that will eventually unravel the strong force in local space. Everything within 10 light-years will cease to exist at the atomic level. Acceptable losses to prevent Makari philosophical contamination. Chen sighed, a sound that somehow carried across the vast chamber despite being produced by a single human throat. This is exactly why the collective exists. You're both so focused on being right that you've forgotten how to survive being wrong. She gestured, and the chamber display shifted to show something that made even veteran diplomats gasp. Massive fleets were engaging across 17 different systems, each battle involving weapons that violated different fundamental laws of physics. Both sides are now committed to total victory. Makari forces are deploying reality viruses that rewrite local physics to favor their molecular structure. Thexian forces are responding with probability bombs that make enemy actions statistically impossible. The cascade effects are turning entire solar systems into zones where mathematics no longer works. High Arbiter Zilnash found her voice. Council military forces are moving to contain. Council military forces are exactly 12 minutes away from complete annihilation, Chen interrupted. War singers show them what happened to the Council fleet at Vega, the Makari being pulsed with what might have been amusement. Vega system no longer exists in recognizable form. Council vessels experience total molecular disintegration upon entering virus-modified space. 17 ships, Chen said quietly. 43,000 beings gone in 3 seconds because they encountered an area where the laws of chemistry had been rewritten to exclude their hull materials. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of life support systems struggling to process the shock and fear being released by 200 species simultaneously. "What are you proposing?" High Arbiter Zilnash asked. "Immediate cessation of hostilities. Both Makari and Thexian forces withdraw to minimum safe distance while the collective deploys reality stabilization technology." The Makari withdraw for no species, War Singer Kralvex declared, its crystalline form blazing with aggressive energy. Thexian computational matrix indicates victory probability remains optimal. Geometric leader then added, its pattern shifting into more complex configurations. Chen nodded as if she had expected these responses. "I was hoping we could resolve this diplomatically." She touched her uniform, and every screen in the chamber lit up with tactical displays showing something impossible. Human vessels were materializing throughout both Makari and Thexian territory, not arriving through conventional travel, but simply appearing in strategic positions around military installations.
Captain Chen, High Arbiter Zilnash's voice carried a note of warning.
Intervention in council member conflicts is exactly what the council should have been doing instead of debating proper procedures while reality disintegrated. The displays showed human ships engaging both Makari and Thexian forces simultaneously, but these weren't battles in any recognizable sense. Human weapons seemed to simply convince enemy vessels that they no longer wanted to fight. "Pacification technology," Chen explained. "We studied your psychology profiles for both species and developed quantum emotional resonance fields. Their crews are now experiencing profound understanding of the philosophical positions they've been fighting against." On the screens, Makari and Thexian vessels were powering down weapons and beginning to retreat from contested areas. "You are using psychological warfare?" Kethvar asked. "We're using empathy enhancement. Much more effective than violence, and it doesn't leave craters in space-time." War Singer Kralvex's crystalline structure was shifting between colors rapidly. Makari consciousness remains altered. "This is unacceptable mental contamination. You'll recover in about 6 hours with a much better appreciation for Thexian philosophical nuances. Consider it educational." Geometric leader Al-Then's patterns were also changing. Thexian computational matrices are processing previously inconceivable Makari logical frameworks. This is unprecedented. Peace usually is when you're accustomed to war. The chamber displays shifted again to show reality distortion zones beginning to contract as human vessels deployed technology that looked like crystallized mathematics into the damaged space. "Quantum repair nanites," Chen explained. "They convince damaged spacetime that it prefers to exist in stable configurations." "How long to complete repairs?" High Arbiter Zilnash asked. 17 days for basic stabilization. 3 months for complete restoration, assuming no additional reality-warping weapons are deployed. Chen's image turned to address the Makari and Thexian commanders directly, which brings us to the real issue. Both your species have developed weapons that can break the universe. That's not sustainable for galactic civilization. "Makari defensive capabilities remain non-negotiable," War Singer Kralvex began. "Will be redesigned to work within stable physics," Chen interrupted. "The collective has better versions of everything you've built. Versions that don't accidentally cause local reality to forget how to exist. Thexian strategic advantages require will be maintained through technologies that enhance reality instead of destroying it. The collective is now responsible for maintaining galactic stability. Council species can participate in that process, or they can be quarantined until they learn to play with dangerous toys responsibly. The chamber was silent for a long moment as delegates processed what they had just witnessed. A species they had considered barely capable of spaceflight had just ended a war between two of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. "What happens now?" High Arbiter Zilnash asked. "We teach you how to survive in a universe where primitive and advanced don't mean what you thought they meant." Leaving the Galactic Council staring at displays showing impossible human technology casually repairing the fundamental structure of reality, while their greatest military powers sat neutralized by enhanced empathy. Ambassador Kethvar spoke into the silence. "I believe we need to reconsider our assumptions about intelligence, technology, and which species are truly qualified to lead galactic civilization." The age of human leadership had begun. 6 months after the reality war ended, Ambassador Kethvar stood in what had once been the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The crystalline dome remained, but everything else had changed in ways that reflected the new order emerging across civilized space. The chamber now hosted representatives from over 400 species. 30 of them is twice the original number. The additional delegates came from worlds the Council had never detected, civilizations that had existed in quantum-folded space and pocket dimensions for millennia, while the advanced species built massive, energy-intensive empires that blazed like beacons for anyone who cared to look. "The Primitive Species Collective presents its final integration report," announced Captain Sarah Chen, who now held the newly created position of Director of Galactic Stability. Her human vessel, Prometheus, hung in perfect formation with the Council's space station alongside ships representing 18 species that had never appeared in any galactic database. High Arbiter Zilnash, her tentacles moving in patterns that had evolved to show respect rather than authority, gestured for attention. "Director Chen, please present your findings." Chen activated the central holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy that looked nothing like the version the Council had been using for centuries. Chen began, "The Makari-Thexian conflict zones have been restored to standard physics. More importantly, both civilizations have integrated collective technologies that make reality-warping warfare impossible." The map showed green zones spreading outward from what had been the most damaged areas. Kethvar recognized the pattern. Wherever collective technology had been deployed, space-time had become more stable than it had been before the war. "What's the long-term prognosis?" asked Director Vex High, who now served as liaison between traditional Council survey methods and collective observation networks. "Excellent. The quantum repair nanites have established permanent monitoring systems that will prevent similar cascade failures in the future. Any attempt to deploy reality-warping weapons will be automatically neutralized before damage can occur." A crystalline Genth delegate chimed a question. "What about species sovereignty? The collective technologies are monitoring all space within Council territory." Chen's expression remained patient. The monitoring systems distinguish between legitimate scientific research and attempts to break fundamental physics. "As long as your experiments don't threaten universal constants, you'll never notice the nanites exist." Warsinger Kralvex, the Makari commander who had been present during the crisis, pulsed with colors that indicated philosophical curiosity rather than aggression. Makari consciousness has adapted to enhanced empathy protocols. Previous philosophical positions regarding Thexian logical frameworks have been reconsidered. Geometric leader Alphen, the Thexian military commander, shifted into patterns indicating agreement. Thexian computational matrices now incorporate Makari emotional reasoning. Previous statistical models were incomplete. Kethvar found himself impressed by how thoroughly the two species had changed. What had begun as psychological pacification technology had evolved into genuine philosophical integration. Former enemies now worked together on projects that combined Makari quantum manipulation with Thexian probability mathematics. The real transformation, Chen continued, has been in how galactic civilization approaches technological development. The display shifted to show comparative development charts that made Kethvar's scales ripple with amazement. In 6 months, average technological advancement across council space had increased by orders of magnitude. How is this possible? Asked a Zephyrian delegate. Cooperation versus competition, Chen replied simply. The traditional model of each species developing technology independently then jealously guarding advances creates enormous inefficiency. The collective model shares all discoveries instantly across all member civilizations. She gestured, and the display showed research networks spanning hundreds of worlds. A breakthrough in energy production on one world is immediately tested and refined by specialists on 50 other worlds. Medical advances are validated across diverse biological systems. Engineering innovations are stress-tested in environments no single species could duplicate. The result is technological advancement that proceeds geometrically rather than linearly. What about intellectual property, economic competition? The entire foundation of interspecies trade relations? Rendered obsolete, Chen said without hesitation. When every species has access to the same technological base, competition shifts from having the best technology to using it most creatively. The display shifted again, showing examples that redefined what Kethvar thought possible. Drakmari engineering combined with human intuitive problem-solving had produced starship designs that were both more efficient and more beautiful than anything either species had achieved alone. Vortec analytical capabilities merged with Melody emotional intelligence had created artificial intelligences that were both brilliant and genuinely caring. The galaxy is becoming something unprecedented, Chen continued. A true cooperative civilization where species diversity strengthens rather than divides. And if species choose not to participate, High Arbiter Zilnash asked, then they continue as they always have. Collective membership is voluntary. However, Chen activated another display showing resource allocation patterns. Non-member species are discovering that isolation becomes expensive when everyone else is sharing advanced technologies freely. Species that had refused collective integration were falling behind so rapidly that their populations were demanding government changes. The economic advantages of cooperation were too obvious to ignore. There's something else, Chen said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Something we discovered during the reality war that changes everything about galactic strategic planning. The central display shifted to show the galaxy from an impossible perspective, as if viewed from outside normal space-time. What Kethvar saw made his mind struggle to process the implications. The Makari-Thexian conflict wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern that's been repeating across the galaxy for millions of years. The display showed temporal layers revealing ancient wars, reality distortions, and cosmic-scale destructions that occurred in cycles roughly every 50,000 years. Advanced civilizations develop reality-warping weapons, engage in total warfare, damage the fundamental structure of space-time, and either destroy themselves or get forced back to primitive technology levels. Civilizations rise, develop dangerous technologies, fight wars that break physics, collapse, and start over. A Drakmari mathematician called out from the upper tiers, "What breaks the cycle?" Collective cooperation, Chen replied. When civilizations learn to share knowledge instead of hoarding it, they develop the wisdom to handle dangerous technologies responsibly. Instead of competition leading to conflict, diversity leads to stability. The human species, she continued, along with the other collective members, represent something new in galactic history. Species that learned cooperation early in their development, before they had the power to break reality. Director Vexhai clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. That's why you maintained the primitive facade. You needed time to develop cooperative technologies before revealing your capabilities. If we'd revealed ourselves too early, the established civilizations would have either destroyed us as threats or tried to assimilate us as resources. Neither outcome would have allowed us to develop the perspective needed to prevent the next cycle of galactic self-destruction. High Arbiter Zilnash's tentacles wove patterns of deep contemplation. What you're describing is a fundamental change in how galactic civilization operates. It's the only change that allows galactic civilization to survive, Chen corrected. The alternative is watching the cycle repeat until someone develops weapons that damage the universe permanently. Kethvar felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place. The observation posts, the entertainment value of watching primitive species, you used our condescension as camouflage while you learned everything about our weaknesses. The council system, despite its flaws, created the first stable multi-species government in galactic history. That's an achievement worth preserving and improving, which is why we're not replacing the council, Chen continued. We're evolving it. The new Galactic Cooperative maintains all existing diplomatic frameworks while adding collective technologies for stability and prosperity. The chamber's displays shifted one final time, showing a vision of the galaxy that took Kethvar's breath away. Hundreds of species working together on projects that spanned solar systems, reality-stable technologies that enhanced rather than destroyed. Civilizations that had learned to grow together instead of apart. The choice before every species is simple, Chen concluded. Join the cooperative and help build something unprecedented in galactic history, or maintain isolation and watch the future develop without you. Warsinger Kralvex pulsed with colors indicating philosophical certainty. Makari civilization chooses cooperation. Previous isolation was suboptimal. Geometric leader Alfen's patterns shifted into configurations of agreement. Thexian mathematical models indicate cooperative outcomes exceed competitive alternatives by factors approaching infinity. One by one, delegates throughout the chamber began indicating their species' acceptance of collective integration. The Zephyrians, the Melody, the Crystalline Genteth, even the proud Drakmari Empire. High Arbiter Zilmash raised her tentacles for attention. By unanimous consent of all member species, the Galactic Council formally dissolves itself and reconstitutes as the Galactic Cooperative, with full integration of collective technologies and methodologies. The cheers, songs, harmonic resonances, and chemical releases that followed created a symphony of celebration that had never been heard before. 200 species expressing joy simultaneously in perfect harmony. As the celebration continued, Kethvar approached Chen privately. Director, there's something I need to understand. Humans were genuinely primitive when we first discovered Earth. Your technological advancement over just a few centuries was impossible by any known development model. Chen smiled, and for the first time, Kethvar saw something in her expression that reminded him she was alien despite her familiar appearance. Ambassador, who told you we were primitive when you discovered us? Our initial survey reports clearly showed you what we wanted you to see. Humans have been spacefaring for over 1,000 years. We've had colonies throughout this galaxy since before the Council was founded. That's impossible. Our historical records were compiled by species who never learned to look for civilizations that didn't want to be found. Chen gestured toward the celebrating delegates. Every species in the collective made the same choice, Ambassador. We learned early that the safest way to survive in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations was to appear too primitive to be worth conquering. Until you were ready to stop hiding, until we were ready to lead. The galaxy is vast, Ambassador Kethvar, older and stranger than the Council ever imagined. The cooperative is just the beginning of what becomes possible when species learn to work together instead of consuming each other. What comes next? There are others out there, other civilizations that have learned cooperation, and unfortunately, others that haven't. The cooperative gives us the strength to defend what we've built, and the wisdom to help others build something better. As Kethvar watched the impossible human technology seamlessly integrating with the best achievements of hundreds of civilizations, he realized that the galaxy's greatest joke had become its salvation. The species everyone had laughed at had been preparing to save them all along. The entertainment was over. The real work was just beginning. And for the first time in galactic history, every species was working together to build something that could last forever. The galaxy laughed at Earth. Then humans appeared from the shadows. HFY.